Think about someone you know who has been working on the same dream for 3 years. Not working on it, talking about it. The business, the plan, the life they're about to start living. And somehow, every time you check in, they're still in the same place, still preparing, still almost ready. Most people call this laziness. It isn't. These are often the most passionate, most articulate, most visionary people in the room. They don't lack ambition. They have more of it than most. And yet, nothing moves. The dream stays perfect. The action never quite arrives. That gap between what someone believes they're capable of and what they actually do isn't random. It follows a pattern. A very specific psychological pattern that most people never recognize in themselves until someone names it directly. There are 8 signs, and if you've ever felt stuck inside your own potential, at least a few of these are going to describe you exactly. Here's the first pattern, and it's probably the most visible one. Point 1. They talk about their goals more than they work on them. You've seen this. The dinner where someone lays out their entire vision. The steps, the timeline, the inevitable outcome, with the kind of certainty that makes you think, they've clearly already started. They haven't. What looks like enthusiasm is functioning as a substitute for action. There's research behind this. When people share their goals and receive social acknowledgement, the brain registers a small reward, a microdose of the feeling that comes from actual progress. The brain got what it wanted. The urgency to act quietly deflates. The talking isn't separate from the pattern. The talking is the pattern. Point 2. They are experts at beginning. These are not people who never try. They try constantly. New notebooks, new apps, new routines announced on a Sunday evening. The beginning of something always gets full energy. The beginning is the only phase where the dream and reality feel perfectly aligned. There's no evidence of difficulty yet. No gap between who they imagined they'd be doing this and who they actually are doing it. Starting over resets that. Each new beginning is another moment where failure hasn't happened yet. It isn't momentum. It's the mind's way of living permanently in the one phase that feels safe. Point 3. They catastrophize the middle. The middle of any goal is unglamorous. The results aren't visible yet. The initial energy has faded. And for some people, this is where the mind starts running threat simulations. Every possible outcome, every failure scenario, every version of how this could go wrong. From the outside, this looks like overthinking, like perfectionism, like they're just being careful. What's actually happening is closer to a threat response. The brain, sensing real stakes for the first time, begins stress testing everything. The mental load becomes genuinely exhausting. And by the time it's time to act, they're already tired from thinking about acting. That's not a character flaw. That's a nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Point 4. They surround themselves with other dreamers. Pay attention to who these people spend time with. Often, it's a tight circle of equally ambitious, equally stationary people. They talk about ideas. They validate each other's visions. They reference what they're planning to build with the same energy someone else might use to describe what they've actually built. No one in the group is ahead. No one is behind. The standard of the room becomes animated conversation, not measurable output. And because everyone around them is also in the planning phase, there's no friction. No one to notice. No one to ask uncomfortable questions. The environment isn't just reflecting the pattern. The environment is quietly sustaining it. Point 5. They mistake consumption for progress. This one lands differently because it's so easy to miss. They watch the videos. They read the books. They take the courses and listen to the podcasts and fill notebooks with notes on frameworks they haven't used yet. And it genuinely feels like movement because the brain often cannot distinguish between learning about doing something and doing it. The feeling of preparation is real. The preparation sometimes never ends. There's a name for this. Researchers call it pseudo-work, activity that mimics productivity while producing none of its results. The mind gets the feeling of forward motion without the cost of actual risk. Understanding this doesn't make it stop, but it names something you've probably felt without knowing what to call it. Point 6. They are afraid of becoming someone who tried and failed. This is the one underneath all the others. As long as they haven't tried, they are still someone who could. The dream exists in a state of perfect possibility, uncontaminated by reality, undiminished by evidence. The moment they try, that changes. They become someone with a result, and that result might be failure. So the dream isn't really about the future. It's serving a function in the present, protecting a specific self-image from the specific pain of a specific kind of finding out. The plan gets refined. The timing never quite arrives, and the person remains intact, someone who still might. Point 7. Their identity hasn't caught up with their goals. Here's the layer underneath that. The brain resists actions that don't match how a person privately sees themselves. Not the public version, the internal one. The one that carries old evidence, things not finished, risks not taken, patterns that have repeated enough times to feel like facts. If that internal image still holds, "I'm not someone who follows through," or "people like me don't actually do this," no amount of external motivation bridges that gap. The goal exists in the future. The identity lives in the past. And the body, responding to the older story, quietly declines to move. What looked like a motivation problem is actually an identity problem, which is harder, but it's also more specific. And specific problems have specific solutions. Point 8. They confuse clarity with readiness. The plan keeps getting sharper, more detailed, more thorough. Every variable examined, every risk accounted for, every step mapped with increasing precision. And it still doesn't move, because clarity creates the sensation of readiness without requiring any action at all. The feeling they're waiting for, the feeling of being ready, is one that action itself would produce. Not more planning, not more research, not one more refinement of a plan that was already workable 3 drafts ago. The wait was always for a feeling. The feeling was always on the other side of going. None of these are random habits. Taken together, they form something coherent, a system the mind builds, quietly and without announcement, to protect a person from a very specific kind of pain. Not the pain of failing, the pain of finding out. Because trying converts a dream from possibility into evidence, and evidence can be disappointing in ways that possibility never can. The distance between dreaming and doing isn't a gap in talent. It isn't a gap in ambition. It's a gap in what a person is willing to risk discovering about themselves. That's the thing no one says out loud. But most people who dream big and stay still already know it. They've known about it for a while.